kind of like what the media is not really portraying. Like the scientists are kind of being kind of muffed out, you know.
Well, I recently attended the Marine benthic ecology meetings, and I got to hear some talks by scientists that have been studying the impacts of the oil spill. And one of the things that surprised me is that several of the studies that have been sort of following marine life in the Gulf of Mexico haven't really found much of an effect of the oil so far. Like one study out of the Dolphin Island Sea Lab in Mobile, Alabama, looked at fish abundance in seagrass beds. And they looked in Alabama, North Florida, and areas where some oil was washing up on the beaches, and they didn't find that the fishes had declined in any way or that the change in the fish communities was that dramatic. So they sort of cautioned that it's a little early to know whether or not that means there's low effects of oil or whether we haven't just seen them yet. The big question is how will the oil that's still out there sort of impact the food chain, and then how long will it take us to be able to see that? There's concerns over a large quantity of dolphins that have died in the Gulf of Mexico, but the necropsies have not been conclusive as to whether or not that was at all related to the oil spill. It's just coincidental right now in terms of the timing of it. But for my own work, like blue crabs, the oil spill is more likely to impact the larvae, and you won't notice it until 2 years afterwards, when those crabs would normally enter the fishery. And so one of the toughest things about a 1-year anniversary is that even if it had had a big effect on blue crabs, we wouldn't expect to see it until next year. And so it's a little early to tell on some species whether or not there's going to be a big impact or not. Marine life deals with small amounts of petroleum all the time. The Gulf of Mexico is always leaking a little bit of oil. And so marine life normally encounters some petroleum products and have ways to deal with it. And so it's always a comparison of what would their exposure have been if this event hadn't occurred. The Gulf will recover from that oil spill. I'm fairly confident it will. I'm very, very pleased that it didn't travel as much as we thought it was going to. You know, in the early reports of the oil spill, they showed it making it through the Florida Keys and coming up the East Coast. And that was very frightening to think about, that the impact could be that widespread. But it turned out, I think because of the fact the oil tended to sink faster than anybody anticipated, it got out of those surface currents, and so it didn't really get moved around as much as they thought it was going to get moved around. So.